Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So, I think most of us would agree that a lot of people spend their careers really chasing financial security. But what if what we should really be aiming for is to build a business that creates the freedom to design a life on our own terms? So, today we're talking about taking calculated risks, building confidence, investing, and what it really means to achieve financial freedom. Today's guest, Teri Ijeoma, made a bold decision to walk away from a successful career in education and pursue a path that many would consider risky. That decision not only transformed her own life, but led her to build a business that's helped tens of thousands of people rethink what's possible when it comes to investing, entrepreneurship, and financial independence. She is the founder of Trade and Travel and most recently author of the book, The Risk Worth Taking. Teri, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
So, I think a lot of people dream about building a business around what they know, but very few actually turn their expertise into something scalable. And you went from being an educator to building a multi-million dollar brand, being a full-time trader and entrepreneur. So, looking back on it, was there a moment that made you realize there was another path to financial freedom?
Yes, I was finishing up seminary. I remember this moment like clockwork. This was around 2017. I was finishing up seminary, and my friends had seen that I had taught an investing class overseas. Because before that, I had quit my job as assistant principal, as you said, and I had started traveling around the world. And I traveled in Korea and then Thailand and then Vietnam. And while I was out there, a couple people had asked me to teach them how to trade because that's how I was affording my flights and like all the fun stuff. And they had seen on Instagram that I taught those classes overseas. So when I came back to finish up seminary, my friends were like, "So, Teri, we know that you're going to teach us." And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is just like my personal side hobby. This is not something that I really wanted to share with the world. I'm not trying to build a course. Like, that was not my objective. But they said, hey, we really want you to teach us. So I asked the seminary, and seminary is Bible school. I thought I'd be working in like a church somewhere. I finished up my last semester and I asked the school, can I have a classroom? I just want to teach people, an intro to the stock market. And they were looking at me crazy. They're like, this is a Bible school, right? You don't want to teach like Matthew, Mark, you're not preaching. I'm like, nope. They want to know about the stock market. So lo and behold, they gave me the classroom. I told my friends, I told Instagram and social media, hey, I'm doing this class, intro to the stock market, and it was full. 71 people showed up. That was the moment I knew, oh, this is a thing. People want to learn about investing. And so then from there, I had heard somebody say online, like, you should just say you have an online course. If somebody signs up for it, then you can go make the course, but just say you have an online course. So at the end of the class, I said, I'm thinking once again, no one's going to buy this from me. Like, what, I'm going to tell them it's $2,000, but it's on sale for 1,000. And the reason I said that those prices is because I had paid like 30,000 to learn how to invest in the past. So I knew that it was worth it. But again, I didn't think anybody would buy anything from me. So I tell them, well, I have this investing course. It's $1,000, it's on sale for $1,000, thinking nobody is going to pay me $1,000. Lo and behold, two people sign up. I was like, oh man, now I got to go build the course. And I called it trade and travel because that's what I had been doing to, afford my fun. I was trading stocks to travel the world. And so I said, okay, well, fine, I'll build this course out. It became a bestseller. So to answer your question, the moment I knew this was a thing was my last semester of seminary when I held a class and it filled up.
That is fantastic. I absolutely love that. Um, what do you think quality wise within yourself it was? Because it's one thing to do it once, but it's another, like you say, to get out there and build the course and keep going. What do you think it was within you that allowed you to make that leap and not only build that first course, but then really stay with it? Because so many people have a great idea and they might try once, and if it doesn't work the first time, they give up. So, what is that? What allowed you to stay with it?
I've been an entrepreneur all my life. Like back in high school, I had a candy store and I convinced all the teachers to let me sell like popsicles. And then in college, I sold Mary Kay and sold makeup to all the professors. So the entrepreneurship side of me has always been alive and well. But I think in this moment, it was more about a calling. I felt like God was calling me to help do ministry in the world of finance because I felt like there's a lot of people who want to go after their dreams. They want to pursue things, but they just can't afford it or they don't know how to make their money grow. So this was another way for me to serve the outside of the church, right? And so that's what really kept me going. I felt like I know this is a weird answer, but I just felt like I was called to it and I was being obedient. And it was hard because there was times where I didn't want to work on my curriculum. I told you about the two people who signed up for the class. Like I would write and sorry, and I have to step back. I was in education for a while. So I had the skill set to prepare me for this, but it still needed some staying power and some grit and determination, right? So the two people that had signed up for the class, I would make a course and then I would call them to my apartment and I would teach it to them. And then I'd see where they understood or where they didn't understand. And then I would go back and I would redo it all. And then I'd come back and I'd teach it to them again. And I did this over and over again until I felt like they really knew how to make money. And a little bit later in my journey, maybe like a year into having the course, that was my big goal. I said I had a goal. If I could get 1,000 people to make $1,000 in a day, then we could make $1 million. And if people were making $1 million, then they could change systematic problems in their life. So, for example, education. Education many times is weak because the people in the neighborhood can't afford better schools or healthcare. A lot of times people don't have good healthcare because of money. So in my mind, it was okay, if I could help 1,000 people make $1,000 in a day and then do that over and over, then we can help change the world. So that's what really kept me going, like these bigger issues. And if I could just help people make money, it would solve those things. That's kind of how I was thinking, how I still think.
I think it's really important that there are educators like yourself stepping forth in this space because I think as we're coming up in terms of financial education, you're taught to get a bank account, you're taught how to balance that account usually, right? Not always, and not even necessarily in school, but growing money is an entirely different subject. And I also think sometimes as women, we don't necessarily have, now this isn't always true, but sometimes we don't have access to the same resources that men have. So, and I think too, a lot of people hear, stock trading, investing, and they think, ooh, that's, risky. But it's actually, I think, when you know what you're doing and you have a good system, a really good way to actually grow what you have. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception, other than the risk, that people would have about trading or investing as a skill?
Yeah. And people definitely always say that investing is risky. And that's literally why I wrote the book, The Risk Worth Taking. Because, yes, investing in anything can be a risk, but sometimes there's risk that will change your life and they're worth it. So I do agree with you there. Another burden that's been, when we talk about women, a burden that I've had on my heart lately is we've had a lot of really high skilled, high level women losing their jobs lately. And you're right. They've worked for 10, 20 years. They've built skills to be at the top of their food chain. They're the CEO, they're in the high titles and big suites, they're in Silicon Valley and they're highly educated. But then when something happens and their job goes away from either AI or government change or just anything, now they now have this big severance and they have stock, but they don't know how to use it because no one ever taught them how to actually make their money grow in the stock market. And you're right, there is a stigma around investing and actively trading. Like, so for me, I'm a trader, but that really just means I actively invest. I get in and out, not every day, but just to make profit. If I see that the stocks are doing well, then I sell them. If I see that they've come down, I get back in. So I'm just actively investing versus letting it sit. But there's so many stigmas around that. And it's really not that hard. It's more simple than we think, but we just don't know.
So, in your book, The Risk Worth Taking, um, I think you're really getting at the core theme of something that's really important and what's going on in this country right now. You just mentioned it as well. We have a lot of people who are facing big transitions as a result of technology. And in some cases, there is quite a bit of money that maybe they've built up that they can now roll over to take advantage of things like this. But would you say that it requires them doing what I would call betting on themselves? And do you think that's probably like maybe the hardest, but also most important thing that they can do for themselves, most important decision they can make?
Yes. The biggest thing I see, especially with women, is we don't have confidence around managing our own finances. So betting on ourselves, gaining confidence that we can do it and it's not something that someone else has to do for us is the first thing. It's a mindset issue. I feel like we have the skills. We know like we're good. We can follow a trading plan. If you give us instructions, like, okay, the first thing you do is pick healthy companies. Like I literally have a 7-step trading plan. The ladies that I teach, they can follow instructions. They are good. But it's that first piece of fear that holds them back. They've got to get over that fear of thinking like, well, dang, what if I lose everything? There's risk management for that. It's going to be okay. Well, I'm a little intimidated. People always say that it's so hard. Actually, you're learning. We can show you it, the buttons to press to buy a stock. But the market's so, up and down. Is now the right time? Yes, we can look at stock charts for that. I think people just don't realize that it's something that can be taught. It's a skill, not something that's like arbitrary in the sky, only certain special people know. No, no, no. It's a skill. It's okay.
So, what are some of you've done a lot of trading. So, what are some of the things that you've gotten from trading? So, what has it taught you about decision making that you think has made you a better entrepreneur and business owner?
First thing is patience. Patience to see the stock do what you want it to do, and that translates to patience in all areas of your life. So, for example, one of my biggest losses, I can tell you all of the losses so that you can avoid them in the future. But one of my biggest losses was trying to force an investment to happen faster than it should have. Like, oh man, I really want to get into Meta, and it just ran up to however many dollars, and I feel like I'm missing out. I've got fear of missing out, right? And instead of waiting for it to actually come to the level where I think it's worth buying, I rush it and I get in at the wrong time. That's a risk management tool we actually teach in the book. So if you guys are worried, don't worry. We can teach you that. But one of the big things is patience. I've learned how to wait for the stocks to come to me. And then I also in life, wait for opportunities to come. Another one is discipline around actually sticking to my trading plan instead of just following my gut. Emotions play a big part in investing. You start feeling like, oh my gosh, like I know this is the time to get in. I've been watching this stock for months now. It's coming to the price where I want to get in, but I'm nervous, right? We start having all these emotions and fears and things. And it's like, no, stay disciplined, stick to your plan. As long as you have a trading plan, you have to do that no matter what. You can't worry about what emotions are going to come. You have to stick with it. That's the same thing when the stock is coming down and you're wanting to get out of a trade. There's a thing called a stop loss, and your stop loss will take you out of a trade when the stock comes down. But oftentimes we see it coming towards our stop loss, and we want to just remove the stop loss because we're like, oh, but no, I'm not ready to get out yet. I don't want to I don't want to take a loss. So just the emotions of it, being able to stick to your plan no matter what your emotions are doing, that has been good in trading and in life.
I think that's a huge call out because people are really emotional about money. I mean, and you should be. We work really hard for it, right? That's what we're taught growing up. Um, so when we talk about financial freedom, what does that actually mean to you?
For me, it means managing my who, what, when, where, and why. So, who I work with, what I work on, when I work, and why I do stuff, and where too. All those things are freedom to me. When I was in the school, I loved the kids, but I just felt so trapped. I felt like I couldn't get out, and then I would cry in the bathroom pretty much every day because something happened. And I just felt like there was no other options for me because this was well my salary. This is how I make money, right? I got bills to pay. So now that I'm an investor, I feel like I can actually breathe. I can trade from anywhere. I can work with whoever I want to work with. And the cool thing too, and this is a big misconception, people think as an active investor, you've got to be like glued to the computer. You can't move. No. Honestly, I'm a swing trader. So that means that I get in a trade today. I may not sell it for a month. So there's really nothing for me to do on that trade but just let it sit. So I can go explore the world. I can go and sell books. I can do, whatever I want. So that freedom is what financial freedom is to me.
So you just mentioned you're a swing trader. So if this is something that anybody is thinking about doing, what is kind of our options for how we could consider getting into this?
Sure. When I think about investing, I think of a pyramid. First thing to investing is high yield savings account. That just means you have your money in a savings account that's making about 3 to 5% return. Oftentimes, we have people that have money in regular savings, like a checking account savings, and it's making like 0.000, it's making nothing. So first start part of investing is just put your money in the right account. And I feel like some people miss that part. And it's like, you're already an investor. Just put it, just move the money. Second level of investing is more passive investing. That's the buy and hold. So we put money in, we probably put it into the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, like an index that oversees the whole market or mimics the whole market. And that usually makes about 8 to 10% on average a year. That's, you put $1,000 in, you make $80, right? Good return. Now that's passive. Active investing is I'm going to pick individual stocks, or I might even do this with the indexes, but I'm going to invest in them when they're low, and then when they make some money, I'll sell. And usually you're actively investing for income, but you don't have to do this daily. You can decide how often you want to be in and out of a trade. When I was an assistant principal, I needed $300 a day to replace my income. So I was more active then. I had a list of about 30 companies that I would pay attention to. I only would invest in maybe 3 to 5 at a time, but I would pay attention to those and then I would buy some and maybe by the end of the week sell. And on average, I was making my $300 a day. Now, I don't need as much money. I don't have like a set amount that I need. I recently was trading for my tour stops. The venues are like $20,000 per stop. So I was like, okay, as long as by July I've made, $100,000 on this investment, I can let it sit. So I've been investing in some Robinhood. I let that sit for a couple months. I invested in some Meta, and I don't have to pay much attention to it. I just know, okay, when I make 100,000, I sell it, and now I pay for my tour stops, right? So the guide on that for active investors is I look at charts, stock charts. I'm a technical analysis trader, and the chart will tell you when to buy and sell.
So how did you start making your lists of companies that you wanted? You mentioned that you're watching like 30 at a time. I mean, I think about trying to come up with a list of 30 companies that I would potentially consider investing in, and it sort of gives me a headache. I hate to say it that way, but I'm like, I don't even, how do you know where to start?
Yeah, that's actually, don't worry, I can give you my watch list. So if y'all go to the riskwe'retaking.com, like I'll make sure my team puts my watch list up there and you can have it for free. That'll help take some headache away. But I've been trading now since 2010, so about 16 years. And I've picked companies that I was interested in, but also I've seen healthy growth in over time. So, for example, I have a lot of tech. I have the Magnificent Seven, they say, like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. And then I have a few others like Chipotle is on my list, which has not been doing too well this year. So, guys, don't do Chipotle yet, depending on when you hear this episode. But just I've looked at companies that I like, and then I also look at their earnings report. So once a quarter, the companies tell you how they're doing. I'll listen to those earnings reports and see, are they healthy? Are they projecting good future results? Are they having good profit? And then I'll look at their competitors. So I'll say, okay, I'm thinking about investing in Southwest Airlines. Let me look at all the other airlines and see what's the best airline in that sector. Is it Southwest? Is it American? Is it Delta? And oftentimes for me, I'll actually put their stocks in a watch list and just look at how they perform over a couple weeks. The one that does better on good days and still does better on bad days, that's the one I'll pick. The one the one that's doing well. But that's how I've chosen over the years. And I really have stuck to the same ones. Every now and again, I'll add a new company, but you don't have to watch a million companies to do well in the stock market.
So, just out of curiosity, what landed Chipotle on your list outside of the report that you obviously read on it that said they're doing really well? Was there anything else about Chipotle that you thought was interesting?
Yes, back in the day, so some years back, they were actually like a momentum stock. Everyone was talking about how they use technology, and even during COVID, they were one of the companies that people were praising because they were executing on a high level, and it was all because they were using technology along with food. And then around that time, they had a virus. I'm not sure if you remember the virus at Chipotle, but it had tanked the stock price and then it rose again. So those were some of the things that I was looking for. It's a healthy company, but it had a bad day. The virus had come in and messed up the stock price, but the company overall was still good. So that was one of the reasons why I invested in that.
That's fantastic. I love things like that. Is there anything that you're considering right now for the future that you could tip us off about? There's so many exciting things, specifically maybe even around AI, because I think this is something that's on everybody's mind. We just saw what happened with the SpaceX IPO, but I think it's really interesting if you have any that you'd like to share with us.
Sure. So one that comes top of mind, this one isn't AI, but I actually really like Robinhood right now because the Trump accounts are being held in Robinhood accounts. So I'm not sure if you've heard about or have you heard about the Trump accounts for kids?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so for those that don't know and they're listening to us, just recently in July, the Trump account started having $1,000 go into accounts for kids that are 1.5 and younger. They have to be born after or January 2025. And those accounts are being housed in Robinhood. So the US Treasury is actually putting $1,000 into the accounts of kids, and then those kids get to keep those accounts till the age of 18. For me, I feel like that's a really good setup for Robinhood. Like you have the US Treasury just putting money into your company. So that's one that I've been paying attention to lately. On the AI front, though, in my head, I'm trying to think if there's one in particular that I would recommend over the other, but I'll tell you the categories that I think about. And then this will help people build out their own portfolios. So the first category at the bottom is all of the hardware and the chips and the software that go into like building the pieces. This is where you have your semiconductor chips like Nvidia and AMD. All of those have been doing really well lately. Micron have been doing really well. They've been saying that they can't get over the demand of like they got so many companies needing their chips that they just have too much demand. That's that bottom level. Then after that, you go up into, all right, now we have the data centers and the people that are housing all of the data. So this is where your big momentum stocks from the past were. So for example, like Amazon, Google, those companies are in the companies that house the data and the infrastructure for AI. Those are some good companies. And then after that, you think about the companies that use AI in order to make software. So this is like Palantir, or in the future, maybe OpenAI would be here. They haven't had their IPO yet. But these are companies where they are using AI to create a solution. If I was building out an AI portfolio, I pick a couple companies from each of those parts. So maybe a couple chips like AMD, then I would pick maybe Google or Amazon or one of the people housing the data, and then I'd pick a couple at the top that are actually using the software. So that's how I'd build out my AI portfolio.
So, if someone feels like they want to improve their financial future, but they're a little bit overwhelmed, because I think it can be overwhelming. Is there like a first step that you would encourage them to take just to get started? I think sometimes that first step is really the hardest one. And then after you're going, things start to get easier as you're building momentum. So, what's the first thing we should be thinking about?
Honestly, I tell them to get the Risk Worth Taking book because, and I know that sounds bad, like, oh, she's just promoting her book, but no, like literally, I wrote the book for this very thing, like for people that are feeling intimidated, because I would teach people how to invest and they would know everything. They'd come to the classes, they would know all the things, and then they wouldn't actually place their trade because they were too afraid. And so the book, I wrote it as a story. Like you get to look at this girl named Erin, and she's quitting her job and then traveling like me, and then she starts learning how to invest. And in the book, she goes through the steps. Like she's investing $10,000. And so the first thing she does is she opens her broker account, and this is the second part of the answer. So if it was starting all the way over, this is what I would do, but also this is what she does in the book. So I'd open a brokerage account and I would decide how much fund money you want. So in the book, she has some that she has set aside for retirement, but then she's had this like savings of about, she has $20,000, but she's only going to use 10,000 of it for this. So she puts $10,000 in this brokerage account. And then she decides, okay, first I'm going to put this in the S&P 500, that more safer investing in the whole S&P and just see how that works. So you actually see in the book, she's pressing the buttons, and we show you in a diagram how to press the buttons to actually buy a share of SPY, which follows the S&P 500. So I would do that first. That'd be my first step. Because then I won't feel, I say I, but you, the people listening, you won't feel so intimidated because you literally have already started investing now. You're invested in the overall market, all 500 shares, and you can, breathe. Now you're making about 8 to 10% and you feel good. And then you can say, okay, once I've done that, Teri, I want to be, a little more challenged. Now, how can I invest in a single stock? And you'll see in the book, then she starts learning about risk management. So, how do you decide how many shares you'll buy? We have a formula for that. How do you decide how to put in that stop loss I was telling you about to protect your risk? I show you how to do that. And then after that, she finds confidence when she starts learning how to read charts. And the question for her there was she had called her granny and she was like, Granny, I feel like I just need more consistency. And her grandmother's like, go learn from the experts, go take a class. And in the class, she learns when you read stock charts, you actually find out the best time to buy a stock and the best time to sell a stock. So that would be your next little, upgraded challenge for yourself. How do I read candlesticks so I know when to enter and when to exit a trade? But all those things are in the book. But I'd say start first with opening an account and investing in the SPY, and then we can keep going from there.
I love that. That makes it so simple. And I think it's so great that you have us following along with a character and sort of, being alongside on that journey, but then taking that step ourselves. What a fantastic way to kind of break that barrier down, set the fear aside, take that first step, build confidence, get momentum, and really get out there and start making your money work in a way that's really powering the life that you want. And I really think it's something we don't think enough about. So, Teri, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you let everybody know how they can follow you, connect to you on social media, find you on the internet, and get access to that resource list that you were talking about?
Yes. So I'm going to immediately go to my team right now and say, put my watch list on the website. So theriskworthtaking.com, theriskworthtaking.com. And we have, you'll see the book there, of course, but then also at the top, you'll see learn, and you'll be able to click into learn, and we'll have all those resources for you. So theriskworthtaking.com. And from that page, you'll also see like my Instagram, Teri Ijeoma. You'll see our YouTube. We have a trade and travel YouTube page, but theriskworthtaking.com, best place to start. And buy the book, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, everybody. So if you're listening and you want to take that first step, be sure to get out to the website, theriskworthtaking.com, and take advantage of all of these amazing resources that Teri has put together to help you start taking your money and making it work for you so you can build the life you have always wanted to have. Teri, thanks so much once again for joining us on the show. All right, everybody, until next time.